Most people don't fail because they aren't talented. They fail because they never finish. They start with excitement. They quit with excuses. Then they repeat the cycle for years until unfinished goals become their identity. The world doesn't reward people who begin. It rewards people who complete. This audiobook is about replacing the addiction to starting with the discipline of finishing. Because your life changes the moment finishing becomes more important than starting. Everything you've been looking for, confidence, freedom, success, self-respect, is hiding behind one habit. Finish what you start. Chapter 1. Stop falling in love with new beginnings. Every unfinished life begins with too many exciting beginnings. Think about it. How many books have you started but never finished? How many workout plans lasted 3 days? How many online courses sit half completed? How many business ideas filled you with excitement before quietly disappearing? How many promises did you make to yourself that slowly faded into silence? This is not a lack of intelligence. It is not a lack of potential. It is not even a lack of opportunity. It is something much simpler. You have become addicted to starting. The modern world celebrates beginnings. People announce new goals. They buy expensive equipment. They create vision boards. They tell friends about their plans. For a brief moment, they feel transformed. But nothing has actually changed. Starting changes nothing. Finishing changes everything. Read that again in your mind. Starting changes nothing. Finishing changes everything. Your brain loves beginnings because beginnings feel safe. Every new project carries unlimited possibility. Before reality arrives, everything seems easy. That new business could become a $1 million company. That new diet could finally change your body. That new journal could organize your life. That new language course could open new opportunities. The imagination creates perfection. Reality requires work. And that is where most people disappear, because the brain rewards novelty. Scientists call it the novelty effect. Your mind enjoys discovering something new. It releases excitement before results ever appear. That excitement feels like progress, but excitement is not progress. Buying running shoes does not make you healthier. Buying books does not make you wiser. Planning a business does not make you successful. Thinking about discipline does not build discipline. Starting changes nothing. Finishing changes everything. That is the difference. Most people mistake motivation for commitment. Motivation is emotional. Commitment is behavioral. Motivation says, I feel like doing it today. Commitment says, I do it whether I feel like it or not. Motivation disappears. Commitment survives. Excitement fades. Discipline remains. That is why motivation is unreliable. If your actions depend on emotion, your progress will always be temporary. Some mornings you'll feel unstoppable. Other mornings you'll want to quit. If feelings control your actions, inconsistency becomes your lifestyle. You have a choice. You can chase another emotional high, or you can become someone who finishes. Look around your own life. There are unfinished conversations, unfinished goals, unfinished relationships, unfinished dreams, unfinished versions of yourself. Each unfinished commitment quietly steals confidence, not because the task was impossible, but because your mind remembers. Your mind is always keeping score. Every time you quit, your subconscious records it. Every broken promise becomes evidence. Evidence that maybe you cannot trust yourself. That is the hidden cost nobody talks about. Failure is painful, but unfinished effort is even more dangerous, because unfinished effort slowly becomes identity. You stop saying, I quit that project. Instead, you begin saying, I'm just someone who never follows through. That belief spreads everywhere. Into your work, into your health, into your finances, into your relationships. One unfinished habit becomes an unfinished life. Consider the person who buys a gym membership every January. For 1 week, they wake up early. They prepare healthy meals. They tell everyone this year will be different. Then work becomes stressful. Sleep becomes inconsistent. The excitement disappears. The gym card stays in the wallet. Months later, they blame time. They blame work. They blame age. But those were never the real problem. The real problem appeared much earlier. They depended on motivation instead of discipline. Excitement fades. Discipline remains. Or think about the entrepreneur with 10 brilliant business ideas. Every few months, they discover another opportunity, a new market, a new product, a new trend. Every idea feels like the one, until the hard work begins. Customer complaints, financial uncertainty, long nights, unexpected setbacks. Suddenly, another exciting idea appears, so they abandon the first, then the second, then the third. Years pass. Nothing gets built. Not because the ideas were bad, because nothing was finished. Starting changes nothing. Finishing changes everything. The same pattern appears with books. Thousands of people proudly purchase books about success. They highlight the first chapters. They share inspirational quotes online. Then the book sits on a shelf. Knowledge without completion changes nothing. Reading halfway changes little. Living the lesson changes everything. You don't need another beginning. You need another ending. That is the key. This chapter is not asking you to stop dreaming. Dreams matter. Ambition matters. Vision matters. But dreams without completion become entertainment. Discipline turns dreams into reality. Ask yourself one uncomfortable question. How many exciting beginnings are secretly preventing your success? Maybe it is the constant search for better productivity systems. Maybe it is switching careers every year. Maybe it is changing workout programs every month. Maybe it is rewriting your goals instead of accomplishing them. Maybe it is waiting for inspiration. You have a choice. You can keep collecting new beginnings, or you can start collecting finished victories. Even small victories matter. A completed workout, a completed chapter, a completed conversation, a completed promise. Completion teaches your brain something powerful. I am someone who finishes. That identity becomes stronger every single time, and identity is always more powerful than emotion. Do not underestimate small completions. People often wait for giant breakthroughs. They imagine one massive achievement changing everything. Life rarely works that way. Confidence is built one completed action at a time. Discipline is built one completed action at a time. Character is built one completed action at a time. Your future is built exactly the same way. Not through dramatic beginnings, through ordinary endings. You don't need their permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need endless motivation. You need consistency. It's not about excitement. It's about completion. It's not about motivation. It's about commitment. It's not about starting. It's about finishing. That simple shift changes everything, because the people you admire are not necessarily smarter. They are not always more talented. They simply developed a habit that most people never build. They finish. When the excitement disappears, they continue. When boredom arrives, they continue. When progress slows, they continue. When nobody is watching, they continue. That is discipline. That is why they eventually succeed. Remember this truth whenever another exciting opportunity appears. Ask yourself one question before you begin. Will I still be here when this stops being exciting? If the answer is no, don't start. If the answer is yes, then commit completely. Because your future will never be determined by how many things you begin. It will always be determined by how many things you finish. You have learned why beginnings are so seductive. Now it's time to understand the hidden damage left behind by everything unfinished. Chapter 2. Every unfinished task steals your identity. There is a silent conversation happening inside your mind every single day. Most people never hear it, but it is shaping every decision they make. Every time you promise yourself something and fail to follow through, your mind remembers. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," and tomorrow becomes next week, your mind remembers. Every time you leave another project unfinished, another goal abandoned, another commitment broken, your mind quietly records the evidence. Not evidence that you're incapable, evidence that your words cannot be trusted. And eventually, something dangerous happens. You stop believing yourself. That is the real price of unfinished work. The unfinished project is not the problem. The unfinished version of you is. Most people think confidence disappears because they fail. That isn't true. Confidence disappears because they repeatedly break promises to themselves. There is a massive difference. Failure can teach you. Failure can strengthen you. Failure can make you wiser. But breaking your own word weakens something much deeper. It weakens your identity. Trust is earned with yourself first. That's the key. Think about how trust works with another person. If someone tells you they'll arrive at 8 o'clock but constantly show up at 9, would you trust them? If someone promises to repay money but never does, would you trust them? If someone repeatedly says they'll help you and never follows through, eventually you stop believing what they say. Now ask yourself a harder question. Why should your own mind trust you? If every Monday you promise to exercise, if every month you promise to save money, if every year you promise that this time will be different, but your actions always say otherwise, why would your subconscious believe your next promise? It wouldn't, because trust is never built through intention. Trust is built through evidence. Trust is earned with yourself first. That's the key. This is why so many people feel stuck. They keep searching for more confidence, more motivation, more inspiration. Another podcast, another book, another productivity app. They believe confidence is something they find, but confidence is something they build. One completed promise at a time. Confidence is not a personality trait. It is accumulated proof. Every completed action whispers the same message. I can rely on myself. Every unfinished action whispers something else. I probably won't. Those whispers become beliefs. Those beliefs become identity. Identity becomes destiny. You become what you repeatedly finish. Read that slowly. You become what you repeatedly finish. Not what you dream about. Not what you plan. Not what you announce online. Not what you wish for. You become what you repeatedly finish. That is why two people with equal talent often live completely different lives. One keeps showing up. The other keeps restarting. One keeps finishing. The other keeps explaining. Years later, people call one person disciplined. They call the other full of potential. Potential without completion is invisible. The world cannot reward unfinished work. Imagine a builder constructing a house. He lays the foundation, builds half the walls, then walks away. Next year he begins another house, again halfway, then another, again halfway. Would anyone call him successful? Of course not. It doesn't matter how beautiful the blueprints were. It doesn't matter how excited he was on the first day. Half-built houses protect no family. Half-built dreams transform no life. Yet many people build their lives exactly this way. Half a business, half a degree, half a fitness journey, half a relationship, half a commitment, half an identity. Then they wonder why they never feel complete. Because completion creates identity. Incompletion creates doubt. You become what you repeatedly finish. That's the key. Your identity isn't created during moments of inspiration. It is created during ordinary moments when nobody is watching. The alarm rings. Do you get up? The workout becomes uncomfortable. Do you continue? The project becomes boring. Do you finish? Those ordinary decisions become extraordinary character. Every decision answers one silent question. Can I trust myself? Most people answer that question without realizing it. Every excuse says no. Every completed promise says yes. This is why positive thinking alone never works. Stand in front of a mirror all day and repeat, I am confident. Nothing changes. Say, I believe in myself. Nothing changes. Tell yourself, I can do anything. Still, nothing changes. Because your subconscious does not listen to empty words. It watches repeated actions. Actions are evidence. Evidence changes belief. Belief changes identity. Identity changes behavior. Behavior changes your future. That is the order, not the other way around. People often try to skip the evidence. They want confidence before action. But confidence comes after action. They want certainty before commitment. But certainty follows commitment. They want to trust themselves before proving themselves. But trust must be earned. Trust is earned with yourself first. That's the key. Look back over your own life. Think about something you actually finished. Maybe it was earning a degree, completing military training, finishing a marathon, paying off debt, writing a book, building a business. Notice what happened afterward. You didn't just complete the task. You became someone different. You walked differently. You spoke differently. You made decisions differently. Because every meaningful completion rewrites your identity. It gives your mind undeniable proof. I finish difficult things. Once your brain accepts that belief, future discipline becomes easier. Because you're no longer trying to act disciplined. You're acting consistently with who you believe you are. Identity drives behavior. That's why the goal isn't simply to finish one project. The goal is to become someone who finishes projects. There is a difference. One changes your schedule. The other changes your life. So begin rebuilding trust today, not tomorrow, not next Monday. Today, choose one promise you've been avoiding, one email, one chapter, one workout, one difficult conversation, one financial decision, one unfinished commitment. Finish it. Don't underestimate how small the task is. Your subconscious doesn't measure size, it measures consistency. Every completion deposits another piece of evidence. I keep my word. I finish what I begin. I can trust myself. Repeat that often enough, and eventually it becomes automatic. You no longer need motivation. You no longer need external accountability. You no longer need someone watching over your shoulder, because the person you refuse to disappoint is yourself. That is real discipline. And real discipline always begins with self-trust. You become what you repeatedly finish. Trust is earned with yourself first. That's the key. Master this principle, and you'll stop searching for confidence in books, videos, and motivational speeches. You'll build it yourself. One completed promise at a time. You have begun rebuilding trust with yourself. But trust alone is not enough. The next obstacle is one that keeps millions trapped in endless preparation instead of meaningful action. Chapter 3. Stop waiting until you feel ready. There is one sentence that has quietly stolen more dreams than failure ever could. I'll do it when I'm ready. It sounds responsible. It sounds mature. It sounds intelligent. But most of the time, it is nothing more than fear wearing a mask. The truth is simple. You are not waiting for the right time. You are waiting for the absence of discomfort. And that day never comes. Most people believe successful people started because they felt confident. The opposite is true. They became confident because they started. Confidence is never the entrance ticket. It is the reward for walking through the door. That's the key. Think about every major decision in your life. Your first job, your first relationship, your first presentation, your first investment, your first business, your first day at the gym. Were you completely ready? Of course not. No one is. Readiness is one of the greatest illusions ever created. It convinces you that somewhere in the future you'll wake up without fear, without doubt, without uncertainty. But that version of you never arrives, because growth always begins before confidence, not after it. You have a choice. You can spend your life preparing, or you can spend your life progressing. They are not the same thing. Preparation feels productive. Research feels productive. Planning feels productive. Watching another motivational video feels productive. Reading another book feels productive. Making another checklist feels productive. But there comes a point where preparation becomes procrastination, and that point arrives much sooner than most people realize. Many people spend years preparing for a life they never actually live. They wait until they have more money. Then they wait until the economy improves. Then they wait until work becomes less stressful. Then they wait until the children grow older. Then they wait until they have more confidence. Life keeps moving. They stay exactly where they are. Waiting has become their habit. Action has become someone else's. Remember this: life does not reward those who are ready. Life rewards those who move. That's the difference. Look at an airplane sitting on a runway. Everything appears calm, safe, comfortable. The engines are quiet. Nothing is at risk. But airplanes were never built to remain on the runway. They were built to fly. Your potential works the same way. As long as you stay in preparation, you remain safe. But you also remain grounded. The moment you accelerate, uncertainty appears. There is resistance, noise, pressure. Yet only then do you leave the ground. Action creates clarity. Waiting creates anxiety. That's the key. People often believe that action follows certainty. Reality works in reverse. Certainty follows action. The entrepreneur doesn't become certain before launching. The writer doesn't become certain before writing. The athlete doesn't become certain before training. The speaker doesn't become certain before standing on stage. They become better because they begin before certainty exists. That is how mastery is built. Not through perfect planning, through imperfect execution. Done beats perfect. Repeat that until it changes how you think. Done beats perfect. Perfection is another disguise for fear. It whispers, wait until everything is flawless. Wait until you know enough. Wait until you can't fail. But perfection has one purpose: to keep you standing still. Think about the child learning to ride a bicycle. Imagine if that child refused to begin until they were guaranteed not to fall. Would they ever ride? Never. The falling teaches the balance. The mistakes teach the skill. The movement creates the ability. Adults often forget this lesson. Children accept being beginners. Adults try to avoid looking like beginners. That pride becomes expensive. Because every expert was once completely inexperienced. Every master was once awkward. Every successful person once looked unprepared. They simply accepted what everyone else tried to avoid. Being a beginner. You don't need their permission. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You don't need your family to understand. You don't need your friends to approve. You don't even need certainty from yourself. You need one thing. Movement. The first step changes everything. Not because it solves the problem, because it changes who you are. The person standing still and the person taking action are no longer the same individual. One waits. One grows. You have a choice. Ask yourself this question. What have you been postponing? The conversation? The application? The business? The workout? The book? The decision? Now ask yourself another question. What exactly are you waiting for? Be honest. Is it truly preparation? Or is it fear of being judged? Fear of making mistakes? Fear of looking inexperienced? Fear of failing publicly? Most delays are emotional, not practical. Once you recognize that, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating with fear. You start acting despite it. That's courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement while fear is still present. That distinction changes lives, because fear is permanent. Discipline is permanent. Waiting is optional. It's not about feeling ready. It's about acting anyway. It's not about confidence. It's about commitment. It's not about certainty. It's about consistency. That's the key. One of the greatest advantages you can develop is becoming someone who acts quickly once a decision has been made. Notice that phrase carefully. Not someone who makes impulsive decisions, someone who stops delaying after deciding. Many people make the decision, then spend months arguing with themselves. They wake up every morning restarting the same internal debate. Should I? Shouldn't I? Maybe next week. Maybe after vacation. Maybe after I learn a little more. Meanwhile, the disciplined person already has weeks of experience. Because they started. Speed compounds. Delay compounds too. Every day you postpone a meaningful action, you're not standing still. You're falling behind the person you could have become. Imagine planting 2 trees, one today, one next year. Both receive the same sunlight, the same rain, the same care. But one always remains a year ahead. Action works exactly the same way. Starting today creates advantages that no amount of wishing tomorrow can replace. That is why disciplined people respect time. They understand that hesitation has a cost. The cost isn't only lost opportunity. The cost is becoming someone who always hesitates. And identity, once repeated often enough, becomes habit. You don't want hesitation to become your personality. You want action to become your identity. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates greater action. The cycle begins with movement, never with motivation. Readiness is not discovered. It is created. Every difficult thing you've ever accomplished proved that. You learned while doing. You adapted while moving. You improved while struggling. The same principle applies today. Stop asking, "Am I ready?" Start asking, "What's the smallest action I can complete right now?" Then do it, immediately. Because the disciplined life is built through immediate action, not endless deliberation. Done beats perfect. Action creates readiness. You have a choice. Move now, or spend another year waiting for a version of yourself that will never arrive. You have stopped waiting for confidence to appear. Now it's time to build a life where discipline no longer depends on feelings at all. Chapter 4. Build systems that make quitting difficult. Discipline is not built by making stronger promises. It is built by making better systems. That is one of the biggest misunderstandings about success. Most people think disciplined individuals simply have stronger willpower. They imagine that successful people wake up every morning overflowing with motivation. They don't. The difference is much simpler. Disciplined people stop relying on motivation long before everyone else does. They rely on systems. Systems protect discipline. That's the key. Think about brushing your teeth. Do you wake up every morning asking yourself if you feel motivated? Probably not. You simply do it. Not because you're inspired. Because it has become part of your system. Your brain no longer negotiates. There is no internal debate, no emotional discussion. The action has become automatic. Now imagine if every important habit in your life worked the same way. Imagine exercising without debating. Imagine writing without waiting for inspiration. Imagine saving money without forcing yourself. Imagine finishing projects because stopping simply wasn't your normal behavior. That is the power of systems. Systems remove unnecessary decisions, and every unnecessary decision drains energy. Many people spend their mornings asking themselves questions they should never be asking. Should I exercise today? Should I write today? Should I study today? Should I work on my business today? Every question creates another opportunity to quit. Successful people eliminate those questions before the day even begins. The answer was decided yesterday. That's what systems do. They reduce negotiation. It's not about motivation. It's about structure. Remember that. Every time you rely on feelings, you introduce uncertainty. Feelings change. Structure doesn't. That is why routines are powerful. A routine tells your brain, this is simply what we do. Not, this is what we do when we feel inspired. There is a massive difference. One creates consistency. The other creates excuses. You have a choice. Build a life that depends on emotion, or build a life that depends on systems. Only one survives difficult days. Look at professional athletes. Most people admire what happens on game day. Few people admire what happens every ordinary Tuesday morning. The alarm rings. Training begins. Whether they feel excited or exhausted. Whether they're winning or losing. Whether anyone is watching or not. Why? Because training is no longer a decision. It is a system. The same principle applies everywhere. Great writers don't wait until creativity appears. They write at the same time every day. Great investors don't suddenly become financially responsible. They automate their savings. Great leaders don't improvise every conversation. They establish routines for preparation and reflection. The system carries them on the days when motivation disappears. Systems protect discipline. Now let's talk about friction. Every behavior has friction. Some actions are easy. Others require enormous effort. Your environment determines much of that effort. Imagine two different kitchens. In the first kitchen, healthy food is already prepared. Water is sitting on the counter. Fruit is visible. Sugary snacks are nowhere to be seen. In the second kitchen, candy fills every cabinet. Fast food sits on the table. Soft drinks are in plain sight. Which environment makes healthy eating easier? The answer is obvious. The environment changed the behavior before the decision was ever made. Environment always beats willpower. That's why disciplined people design their surroundings carefully. Not because they're weak, because they're wise. They understand something most people ignore. The easiest action usually wins. If scrolling social media requires one tap, while working on your goal requires 10 minutes of preparation, guess which behavior your brain will choose? The easier one, every single time. So reverse it. Make distraction difficult. Make progress easy. Design your life to finish. If you want to write every morning, leave the notebook open on your desk the night before. If you want to exercise, lay out your clothes before going to bed. If you want to read, keep the book beside your chair. If you want to stop checking your phone, move it into another room while working. Tiny changes, massive consequences. People often search for giant breakthroughs, but systems are built through tiny advantages repeated daily. Another powerful system is scheduling. What gets scheduled gets completed. What stays in your head rarely happens. Many people say, "I'll work on it later." Later is not a time. Later is an excuse. Successful people give important work a permanent place on the calendar, not because they have more time, because they protect the time they already have. Every appointment with yourself deserves the same respect as an appointment with someone else. Imagine canceling an important business meeting simply because you didn't feel like attending. You wouldn't. So why cancel the meeting you've scheduled with your own future? Trust is earned with yourself first. That's the key. Tracking is another system that transforms behavior. People naturally repeat what they can see. A visible calendar, a habit tracker, a checklist, a journal. Each completed mark becomes evidence. Evidence creates momentum. Momentum creates identity. Identity creates consistency. When you watch a chain of completed days growing longer, quitting becomes emotionally expensive. You don't want to break the streak. The system protects the habit, not because someone else is watching, because you are. There is another kind of friction few people consider. Decision fatigue. Every decision costs mental energy. What to wear, what to eat, when to work, where to begin. By evening, your mental resources are exhausted. That is why routines are so valuable. The fewer meaningless decisions you make, the more energy remains for meaningful work. This is why many high performers simplify parts of their lives. Not because simplicity is exciting, because simplicity preserves discipline. It's not about motivation. It's about structure. Ask yourself an honest question. What in your current environment makes quitting easy? Is your phone always within reach? Does your television dominate your living room? Are your goals hidden inside a notebook you never open? Are distractions easier to access than your purpose? If the answer is yes, don't blame yourself. Change the system. Discipline becomes much easier when your environment works for you instead of against you. Remember this principle. Don't fight your environment. Build your environment. Don't rely on memory. Create reminders. Don't rely on emotion. Create routines. Don't rely on willpower. Create systems. Systems protect discipline. Design your life to finish. It's not about motivation. It's about structure. Every great achievement is supported by an invisible system that nobody applauds. People celebrate the finished book. They never see the daily writing schedule. They admire the healthy body. They rarely notice the prepared meals and consistent bedtime. They respect the successful business. They overlook the calendar, routines, and repeated execution behind it. The visible result always rests on an invisible structure. Build the structure. The results will eventually follow. You have stopped depending on motivation. Now you must prepare for the moment that defeats almost everyone else. The long, repetitive middle where excitement disappears and only discipline remains. Chapter 5. Learn to finish. When it stops being fun, every goal begins with excitement. Every dream begins with possibility. Every commitment begins with energy. And almost every failure begins in the exact same place. The middle, not the beginning, not the end. The long, ordinary stretch between the two. That is where most people disappear. The beginning is exciting. Everything feels new. You imagine the future. You picture the results. You tell yourself that this time will be different. Then reality arrives. The workouts become repetitive. The business grows slowly. The pages become harder to write. The progress becomes difficult to notice. The compliments disappear. The excitement fades. Suddenly, quitting feels reasonable. Not because the goal changed, because your emotions changed. This is the boring middle. And the boring middle is where dreams either mature or die. The middle is where winners are built. That's the key. Think about watching a marathon. The starting line is full of energy. Music is playing. Families are cheering. Everyone is smiling. Television cameras capture the excitement. The finish line is just as emotional. People celebrate. They cry. They hug each other. Medals are awarded. Photos are taken. But what happens in the middle? Mile 12, mile 18, mile 23. No cameras, no applause, just one step after another, one breath after another, one decision after another. That is where the marathon is actually won, not because the strongest runner starts the fastest, but because the disciplined runner refuses to stop when the excitement disappears. Stay anyway. The same principle exists in every meaningful pursuit. Consider the musician. When people see a beautiful performance on stage, they assume talent created it. They rarely imagine the thousands of ordinary practice sessions that came before. The scales repeated every morning. The same song practiced hundreds of times. The same mistakes corrected over and over. The same movements until they became automatic. None of it was glamorous. Most of it was repetitive. All of it was necessary. Boredom is part of mastery. Read that again. Boredom is part of mastery. People often quit because they mistake boredom for failure. They believe, if this feels repetitive, maybe I'm on the wrong path. No, if it feels repetitive, you have probably reached the place where real progress begins. Beginners constantly experience novelty. Masters experience repetition. That is the difference. The beginner enjoys discovering. The master enjoys refining. One chases excitement. The other pursues excellence. You have a choice. Do you want constant stimulation or lasting transformation? You cannot have both. The modern world trains people to escape boredom. The moment life becomes quiet, they reach for their phone. The moment work becomes repetitive, they search for something new. The moment progress slows, they assume something is wrong. But discipline requires a completely different mindset. Instead of running from boredom, disciplined people learn to live inside it. They understand that repetition is not punishment. Repetition is training. Think about a master carpenter. After decades of experience, he still measures carefully. He still sharpens his tools. He still follows the same process. Not because he lacks experience, because experience taught him that consistency produces excellence. Or consider a surgeon. Would you trust a surgeon who constantly searched for exciting new techniques instead of mastering proven ones? Of course not. You want someone who has performed the same careful movements thousands of times. Repetition creates reliability. Reliability creates trust. Trust creates excellence. The same principle applies to your own life. Every meaningful skill eventually becomes ordinary. Reading, writing, investing, leading, exercising, building a business, parenting. Every one of them includes long seasons where progress feels invisible. That is exactly why so few people become exceptional. Most people believe progress should always feel exciting. Reality disagrees. Progress often feels quiet. It feels ordinary. It feels repetitive. Sometimes it even feels disappointing. But appearances can be deceptive. A tree spends years growing roots before anyone notices its height. The strongest buildings spend months developing foundations hidden beneath the ground. Nature understands something humans often forget. Invisible progress is still progress. Stay anyway. There will be mornings when you don't feel inspired. Write anyway. There will be workouts that feel meaningless. Train anyway. There will be business days without results. Work anyway. There will be books where every page feels difficult. Read anyway. The disciplined person understands that emotions are temporary. Habits are permanent. The middle is where winners are built. One reason people quit the middle is because they compare their daily effort with someone else's finished success. They see the best-selling author. They don't see the lonely mornings spent writing chapters that nobody would read for years. They see the successful entrepreneur. They don't see the countless meetings, failures, rejected ideas, and sleepless nights. They see the Olympic athlete standing on the podium. They don't see the thousands of training sessions completed before sunrise. Success compresses years of repetition into one visible moment. People admire the moment. Discipline was built during the repetition. That's the key. If you only love the reward, you will eventually hate the process. But if you learn to respect the process, the reward becomes inevitable. Notice the word respect, not love. You don't have to love every workout. You don't have to love every meeting. You don't have to love every difficult conversation. You simply have to respect what those actions are building. Because every ordinary repetition strengthens something invisible, your identity. Each time you continue despite boredom, you send your brain a powerful message. I don't stop when things become ordinary. That belief becomes stronger than temporary emotion. Eventually, discipline no longer feels like forcing yourself. It becomes your default response. That transformation happens quietly. Nobody applauds it. Nobody notices it. But your future depends on it. There is another danger hiding inside the boring middle, the temptation to constantly improve the system instead of using it. People redesign their morning routine every month. They switch workout programs every 6 weeks. They change productivity apps every few days. They keep adjusting instead of executing. Improvement has its place. Constant reinvention destroys momentum. Sometimes the best decision is not to optimize. It is simply to continue. Stay anyway. Keep writing. Keep lifting. Keep saving. Keep learning. Keep finishing. Because consistency always outperforms intensity over time. One extraordinary week cannot replace one ordinary year of disciplined effort. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. It's not about excitement. It's about endurance. It's not about speed. It's about staying. The middle is where winners are built. Boredom is part of mastery. Stay anyway. One day, you'll look back at the season you almost quit. You'll realize it wasn't wasted. It was shaping the person capable of achieving the goal. Without that season, success would have crushed you. Because character always has to grow before results do. The disciplined person understands this. They stop asking, When will this become exciting again? Instead, they ask, who am I becoming by refusing to quit today? That single question changes everything. Because every day you remain committed through repetition, you become a little stronger, a little calmer, and a little more reliable than yesterday. Mastery is never built in moments of excitement. It is built in ordinary days, repeated with extraordinary consistency. You have learned to survive the boring middle. But another danger still remains. Even after making progress, many people abandon everything simply because something new appears more exciting. Chapter 6. Kill the habit of constantly restarting. There is a dangerous habit that disguises itself as ambition. It looks productive. It feels hopeful. It even sounds responsible. But over time, it quietly destroys your ability to accomplish anything meaningful. That habit is constantly restarting. Most people don't quit forever. They quit temporarily. Then they promise themselves they'll begin again on Monday. Next month. After vacation. At the beginning of the year. After one more book. After one more course. After life becomes less busy. They are always beginning, rarely continuing. Restarting is comfortable, because restarting allows you to keep believing the fantasy without facing the reality. The fantasy says, this next attempt will be different. Reality asks, what changed about you? That is the question most people avoid. Starting over creates emotional relief. For a brief moment, guilt disappears. Hope returns. The clean slate feels exciting. You buy a new notebook. Download a new productivity app. Order new workout clothes. Create a fresh schedule. Write ambitious goals. Everything feels possible again. But after a few days, the same habits return. Because the system never changed. The identity never changed. Only the calendar changed. Restarting is comfortable. Continuing is powerful. That's the key. Think about how many Mondays people have wasted. Monday has become a symbol of imaginary discipline. This Monday, I'll eat healthy. This Monday, I'll wake up at 5. This Monday, I'll finally start writing. Monday arrives. Everything goes well until Wednesday. A stressful meeting happens. An unexpected problem appears. One workout is missed. One unhealthy meal is eaten. Immediately, the mind says, I've ruined the week. I'll restart next Monday. Notice what happened. One mistake became 7 lost days. Not because the mistake mattered, because perfection was expected. Disciplined people don't think that way. They don't restart because of one bad day. They continue despite it. One missed workout does not become a missed month. One bad meal does not become a bad lifestyle. One difficult day does not become a defeated identity. Don't begin again. Continue. There is enormous power in refusing to reset. Imagine a marathon runner who stumbles at mile 15. Would they walk back to the starting line? Of course not. They stand up. They keep moving. Only someone who misunderstands the purpose of the race would begin from the beginning. Yet people do exactly that with their lives. One mistake. Back to the starting line. One distraction. Back to the starting line. One imperfect week. Back to the starting line. Every restart erases momentum that was still alive. Momentum is fragile. Protect it. Even imperfect momentum is stronger than perfect intentions. Continuing is powerful. Look at the world of business. Thousands of entrepreneurs spend years chasing the perfect opportunity. A clothing business today, a coffee shop tomorrow, cryptocurrency next year, artificial intelligence after that. Every trend becomes another beginning. Every beginning delays mastery. Every delay weakens commitment. Eventually, they conclude, nothing works. The truth is different. Nothing had enough time to work. Success often looks boring because it requires staying with one direction long after the excitement disappears. The same pattern appears with productivity. People spend more time organizing work than actually doing work. One month, they follow one planning system. The next month, they discover another. Then another. They change notebooks, applications, calendars, morning routines, even the pens they use. Everything changes except the one thing that actually matters. Daily execution. The best productivity system is not the newest one. It is the one you consistently use. That's the key. Remember this: changing systems feels like progress. Using systems creates progress. Those are completely different experiences. One satisfies the ego. The other transforms your life. You have a choice. Become an expert at beginning, or become an expert at continuing. History only remembers one of those people. Think about learning a musical instrument. Imagine practicing the piano for 3 weeks, then deciding the guitar looks more interesting. After 2 weeks with the guitar, switching to the violin, then trying the drums. Years later, you own 4 instruments. You master none of them. The problem wasn't lack of talent, it was lack of continuity. Mastery demands uninterrupted attention. Every restart interrupts growth. Every interruption delays excellence. The same principle applies to fitness. A person completes 30 days of exercise. They become busy. They miss 4 days. Instead of returning on the 5th day, they convince themselves the streak is broken. So they wait. Weeks pass. Their body loses strength. Their confidence declines. Eventually, another January arrives, another beginning, another promise, another restart. The cycle repeats. Disciplined people break the cycle. They understand something incredibly important. Consistency does not require perfection. It requires recovery. You will make mistakes. You will miss days. You will become tired. You will lose motivation. That is normal. What matters is the speed of your return. The faster you return, the stronger your discipline becomes. Don't measure yourself by how rarely you fall. Measure yourself by how quickly you continue. Don't begin again. Continue. There is another hidden danger inside restarting. Every restart quietly teaches your brain that quitting is acceptable. Your subconscious begins expecting it. It says, "This is what we always do." We get excited. We struggle. We stop. We promise to begin again. Without realizing it, you've built a habit, not the habit of discipline, the habit of restarting. Habits always become identities. Eventually, you stop saying, "I restarted another project." Instead, you begin believing, "I'm just someone who never finishes." That belief becomes heavier every year, unless you interrupt it. Today. Not with another beginning, with another continuation. Trust is earned with yourself first. And trust is earned every time you refuse to abandon progress simply because perfection disappeared. There is a beautiful truth about unfinished work. Most of the progress is still waiting for you. Your book doesn't need a new first chapter. It needs the next chapter. Your fitness journey doesn't need another inspirational speech. It needs today's workout. Your business doesn't need another logo. It needs another customer served. Your savings don't need another financial plan. They need another deposit. Notice the pattern. Progress almost never requires starting over. It requires picking up where you left off. Continuing is powerful. That is why disciplined people rarely use dramatic language. They don't announce, "I'm changing my entire life." They quietly say, "I'm getting back to work." One sentence creates emotion. The other creates results. Ask yourself this question: what have you unnecessarily restarted over and over again? The answer may surprise you. Perhaps you don't need a new goal. Perhaps you simply need to return to the old one. Perhaps the breakthrough you've been searching for isn't hidden inside another beginning. Perhaps it's waiting one more step beyond the place where you stopped. That is where growth usually hides, not at the starting line, but just beyond your last excuse. Restarting is comfortable. Continuing is powerful. Don't begin again. Continue. Those 4 words have the power to rescue years of wasted effort. Because success rarely belongs to the person who made the most dramatic beginning. It belongs to the person who quietly refused to keep starting over. You have learned to stop restarting your life every time it becomes imperfect. Now you must confront another enemy of completion: the endless temptation to chase something newer, easier, or more exciting before you've finished what truly matters. Chapter 7. Finish before you chase. Something better. The greatest threat to your success is not failure. It is distraction. Not obvious distraction. Not laziness. Not procrastination. A much more dangerous kind. Opportunity. That sounds strange. After all, aren't opportunities good? Yes, but too many opportunities become a prison. Every new possibility competes with your current commitment. Every exciting alternative steals attention from what already deserves your best effort. Most people don't quit because they lose hope. They quit because something else suddenly looks more exciting. A better business idea, a better workout program, a better investment, a better productivity system, a better career, a better strategy. The problem is not opportunity. The problem is abandoning progress every time opportunity appears. That habit has a name: shiny object syndrome. It convinces you that success is always somewhere else, just beyond the next decision, just beyond the next course, just beyond the next beginning. So you keep changing direction, again, and again, and again. Years pass. Movement continues. Progress doesn't. Focus creates freedom. That's the key. Imagine holding a magnifying glass under the sun. When the light is scattered, nothing happens. But concentrate that same light into one small point, and it becomes powerful enough to create fire. Your attention works exactly the same way. Scattered attention creates activity. Focused attention creates results. That is why extraordinary people appear calm. They are not chasing everything. They are protecting one thing. Most people measure intelligence by how many opportunities someone can recognize. Disciplined people measure wisdom by how many opportunities someone can ignore. There is an enormous difference. Success is often built more by what you refuse than by what you accept. Every yes is automatically a no to something else. Say yes to another unnecessary meeting. You say no to meaningful work. Say yes to endless scrolling. You say no to deep thinking. Say yes to another exciting project before finishing the current one. You say no to mastery. Everything has a cost. Even the decisions that seem harmless. Especially the decisions that seem harmless. Because small distractions rarely destroy your future in one dramatic moment. They steal it 1 hour at a time. One notification, one email, one random video, one unnecessary conversation, one new opportunity. Individually, they appear insignificant. Together, they become a different life. Protect your attention. That is one of the most valuable disciplines you will ever develop. Think about a master sculptor. Imagine spending months shaping a block of marble. Every strike of the chisel is intentional. Now imagine abandoning the sculpture halfway through because another block of marble looks more interesting. Would greatness ever emerge? Never. not because the sculptor lacked talent. Because attention kept changing direction. Life works exactly the same way. The masterpiece is built through sustained attention, not endless beginnings. Many people secretly believe that successful individuals accomplish more because they say yes to more opportunities. Reality says the opposite. The world's highest performers often disappoint more people than average performers. Why? Because they protect their priorities. They decline invitations. They ignore trends. They refuse projects that don't align with their purpose. They understand something that most people learn too late. Every commitment consumes attention. Attention is limited. Time is limited. Energy is limited. Your life is limited. Everything has a cost. That's the key. Warren Buffett once explained that the difference between successful people and truly successful people is that truly successful people say no to almost everything. Think about that. Almost everything. Not because opportunities were bad, because too many opportunities destroy focus. Completion demands concentration. Imagine trying to dig 10 wells at the same time. You dig 5 feet here, 7 feet there, 3 feet somewhere else. After months of effort, you've moved enormous amounts of dirt, yet you still have no water. Another person digs one well. They continue. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. Eventually, they reach water. The difference was never effort. It was focus. Focus creates freedom. The same principle applies to learning. Some people spend years consuming information, books, podcasts, videos, courses, seminars. They know a little about everything. They master almost nothing. Knowledge becomes another form of entertainment. Meanwhile, someone else chooses one skill, one profession, one mission. They repeat the fundamentals until excellence becomes inevitable. Depth always defeats distraction. Protect your attention. The digital world makes this lesson more important than ever. Every application wants your attention. Every platform wants another minute. Every advertisement competes for your focus. Your phone vibrates. Your inbox fills. Your social media updates. Breaking news appears. Every interruption seems urgent. Most of it isn't. Attention has become one of the world's most valuable currencies. Companies spend billions trying to capture it. If billion-dollar organizations fight to control your attention, don't casually give it away. Guard it. Because where your attention goes, your life follows. You have a choice. You can own your attention, or someone else will. One decision creates freedom. The other creates dependency. Ask yourself an uncomfortable question. How often do you abandon meaningful work simply because something easier becomes available? Maybe you stop writing to check your phone. Maybe you stop studying to answer unnecessary messages. Maybe you stop building your business to research another business idea. Maybe you stop exercising because another workout program suddenly seems more effective. Notice the pattern. The problem isn't changing direction once. The problem is building an identity that constantly seeks novelty instead of completion. Every unfinished commitment weakens your ability to concentrate. Every completed commitment strengthens it. Attention behaves like a muscle. The more often you protect it, the stronger it becomes. The more often you surrender it, the weaker it becomes. That is why deep work feels difficult, not because you're incapable. Because your mind has been trained to expect constant stimulation. Recovery begins by protecting periods of uninterrupted focus, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, no notifications, no distractions, no multitasking. Just one important task, repeated every day. That simple practice can transform an ordinary life. Because extraordinary results rarely require extraordinary intelligence. They require extraordinary concentration. Everything has a cost. Saying yes to one distraction means saying no to one meaningful achievement. Never forget that. The disciplined person does not ask, "What else can I do today?" They ask, "What deserves my complete attention today?" That single question eliminates countless unnecessary decisions. It brings clarity. It creates peace. It builds momentum. Most importantly, it leads to completion. Do not envy people who seem busy all the time. Busyness often hides a lack of direction. Instead, admire those who consistently finish meaningful work. Their calendars may appear less exciting. Their progress appears far more impressive. Because discipline is rarely loud. It is selective. It knows when to act. It knows when to refuse. It knows that every unnecessary yes weakens every important yes. Focus creates freedom. Everything has a cost. Protect your attention. Repeat those words every time another opportunity tries to pull you away from your purpose. Before saying yes, ask yourself, "Will this help me finish what I already started?" If the answer is no, your response should probably be the same. No. Not because the opportunity lacks value, because your commitment deserves more. Completion always belongs to those who stay faithful to what matters most. You have learned to protect your attention from endless distraction. Now it is time to strengthen something even more valuable, the relationship you have with your own word. Chapter 8. Become someone who keeps promises. There is one habit that quietly determines the quality of every area of your life. It is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even discipline by itself. It is integrity. Most people think integrity means telling the truth to other people. That is only part of it. Real integrity begins much earlier. It begins with telling the truth to yourself, and then living according to it. Every promise you make is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every promise you keep strengthens that person. Every promise you break weakens them, whether anyone else notices or not, because someone is always watching. You. You're always watching yourself. That's the key. Think about the promises you make in private. I'll wake up early tomorrow. I'll finish this project. I'll stop wasting money. I'll call my parents. I'll work out after work. I'll finally write that first chapter. No audience hears those promises. No applause follows them. No one congratulates you for keeping them. Yet they may be the most important promises you will ever make, because they shape your identity. When you repeatedly ignore your own commitments, your subconscious learns something dangerous. It learns that your words carry no weight. Eventually, your goals stop feeling real. Your plans become entertainment. Your ambitions become stories you tell yourself, not because they are impossible, because your own mind has stopped believing you. Trust is earned with yourself first. Integrity begins alone. Remember that. Imagine two people applying for the same opportunity. They have similar education, similar experience, similar ability. One difference separates them. One person has spent years keeping small promises. The other has spent years breaking them. The disciplined person enters the room with quiet confidence, not because they know the outcome, because they know themselves. They have evidence. Evidence that when they commit, they continue. Evidence that when things become difficult, they stay. Evidence that their word means something. Confidence is simply integrity remembered. That is why no motivational speech can replace self-respect. Self-respect is earned. One promise at a time. Your word builds your future. Look at your relationships. People don't build trust through grand gestures. trust grows through consistency. Returning the call when you said you would, arriving on time, following through, listening carefully, keeping confidential conversations private, doing what you promised, small actions, repeated consistently. Over time, they become something priceless: reliability. Without reliability, love becomes unstable. Friendship becomes uncertain. Partnership becomes fragile. People don't simply trust what you say. They trust what you repeatedly do. Your personal life reflects this truth. So does your professional life. Employers rarely promote the most charismatic person. They promote the person they can depend on, the employee who finishes, the leader who follows through, the teammate who delivers, the person whose word carries weight. Skill creates opportunity. Reliability creates longevity. Everything meaningful is built upon trust, and trust begins with integrity. Integrity begins alone. Think about your health. Every healthy body is built on promises that nobody witnessed. Choosing water instead of another sugary drink. Going for a walk instead of remaining on the couch. Going to bed when no one tells you to. Preparing healthy meals before hunger arrives. These choices rarely receive applause, yet they shape your future. Every healthy decision whispers, "I care enough about tomorrow to act today." Every unhealthy excuse whispers something else. "I'll deal with it later." Eventually, those whispers become habits. Habits become identity. Identity becomes destiny. Your word builds your future. The same principle governs money. Many people dream about financial freedom. Far fewer develop financial integrity. Financial integrity means keeping promises that produce invisible progress. Saving before spending. Paying debts consistently. Investing patiently. Living below your means. Avoiding purchases made purely for emotion. None of these habits feel exciting. All of them build freedom. Money often reveals whether someone honors long-term promises or constantly surrenders to short-term emotions. The disciplined person chooses future peace over present impulse. Again and again, integrity appears ordinary. Its results are extraordinary. You're always watching yourself. That sentence may be one of the most powerful truths in this entire book. Even when nobody else knows you skipped the workout, you know. Even when nobody notices you broke your budget, you know. Even when no one realizes you abandoned another goal, you know. Your subconscious never misses these moments. It quietly asks one question: can I trust this person? The answer determines far more than you realize, because every future commitment depends on today's answer. Imagine carrying a backpack. Every broken promise places another stone inside. The weight grows slowly, not enough to notice after one mistake, but after years, the burden becomes exhausting. People call it low confidence, low motivation, self-doubt. Often it is simply accumulated evidence that they no longer trust themselves. The beautiful part is this: the opposite works too. Every promise kept removes one stone, one completed workout, one finished chapter, one honest conversation, one financial decision made wisely, one difficult commitment honored. Over time, the backpack becomes lighter, not because life became easier, because your integrity became stronger. You have a choice: become someone who negotiates with every promise, or become someone whose word requires no negotiation. The second path creates peace. When disciplined people make commitments, they don't ask every morning, "Do I still feel like it?" The decision has already been made. Their feelings are welcome. Their feelings are not in charge. That's maturity. It's not about emotion. It's about character. It's not about intention. It's about execution. It's not about appearance. It's about integrity. That's the key. Many people spend years trying to build a better reputation. They worry about what others think. They carefully manage appearances. They want to look disciplined, look successful, look reliable. But reputation is what other people think about you. Character is what you know about yourself. Character comes first. Reputation eventually follows. The strongest people do not perform integrity. They practice it, quietly, daily, without witnesses, without applause, without recognition, because they understand something incredibly important. The most important relationship they will ever have is the one they have with themselves. Every broken promise damages it. Every kept promise heals it. That is why discipline is deeply personal. Before it changes your income, it changes your identity. Before it changes your career, it changes your character. Before it changes your future, it changes the conversation inside your own mind. One day, you stop wondering whether you'll follow through. You simply do. That is freedom. Not freedom from responsibility. Freedom from constant internal conflict. When your actions and your words finally become the same thing, life becomes simpler. Your decisions become clearer. Your confidence becomes quieter. Your discipline becomes stronger, because there is no longer a gap between who you say you are and what you repeatedly do. Your word builds your future. Integrity begins alone. You're always watching yourself. Never forget those 3 truths. Long after motivation disappears. Long after excitement fades. Long after recognition is gone. Your character remains. And character always finishes what it starts. You have become someone whose word carries weight. Now there is only one final transformation left before discipline becomes part of your identity forever. Learning how small daily completions create unstoppable momentum. Chapter 9. Finish small until finishing becomes automatic. Most people underestimate small victories. They are waiting for a dramatic breakthrough, a life-changing opportunity, a massive accomplishment, a single moment that transforms everything. But life rarely changes that way. Lives change quietly, one completed action at a time, one disciplined choice at a time, one promise kept at a time. The greatest mistake people make is believing that small actions produce small results. They don't. Small actions produce identities, and identities produce extraordinary lives. Small finishes create big lives. That's the key. Imagine standing at the bottom of a mountain. The peak seems impossibly far away. If you stare only at the summit, discouragement appears almost immediately. Your mind begins calculating the distance, the effort, the time, the uncertainty. Soon, the goal feels overwhelming. Now imagine changing your focus. Instead of climbing the entire mountain, you simply take one step, then one more, then another. The mountain hasn't become smaller, but your next action has become manageable. That is how disciplined people think. They don't obsess over the finish line. They obsess over the next step. One more step. Read those words slowly. One more step. Because that single phrase has carried more people to success than motivation ever has. People often ask, how do I stay disciplined for an entire year? Wrong question. Ask, can I stay disciplined for the next 10 minutes? The answer is almost always yes. Great discipline is simply small discipline repeated. That is why enormous goals often fail, not because they're impossible, because they encourage all or nothing thinking. Someone decides to completely transform their health. They promise to work out 7 days a week. Eliminate every unhealthy food. Wake up at 5 every morning. Meditate. Journal. Read. Run. Stretch. Track calories. Everything begins at once. Everything collapses at once. The problem wasn't ambition. The problem was ignoring human psychology. The brain resists massive change. It accepts small change. Small finishes create big lives. Think about learning a language. Nobody becomes fluent by studying for 12 hours one Saturday. They become fluent through 20 minutes every day. One lesson. One conversation. One new word. Repeated thousands of times. The same principle builds businesses. The same principle builds wealth. The same principle builds strong marriages. The same principle builds strong bodies. Consistency always outperforms intensity. That's the key. Many people secretly believe that success comes from extraordinary effort. Extraordinary effort certainly helps, but extraordinary consistency changes everything. Imagine two people. One writes 10,000 words in one weekend and then stops for a month. The other writes 500 words every single day. Who finishes the book? Almost always the second person, because completion rewards consistency more than enthusiasm. Completion compounds. That phrase deserves your full attention. Completion compounds. Everyone understands compound interest in money. Invest a little today. Earn a return. Tomorrow, you earn returns on both the original investment and yesterday's growth. Over time, small deposits become extraordinary wealth. Discipline follows the same law. Every completed task makes the next task slightly easier. Every promise kept strengthens the next promise. Every finished workout increases the likelihood of tomorrow's workout. Every completed chapter makes the next chapter less intimidating. Completion compounds. The benefits multiply quietly. Until one day people call you disciplined. They assume you were born that way. They never see the thousands of tiny completions that built your identity. That is the invisible side of success. The outside world sees results. You experienced repetitions. Think about a bricklayer building a house. One brick seems insignificant. One afternoon of work appears unimpressive. But day after day, week after week, month after month, the house begins to appear. No single brick created the home. The accumulated effort did. Your character is built exactly the same way. One decision, one finish, one more step. People often quit because they cannot see progress. But progress is not always visible. Sometimes progress is happening inside your identity long before it appears in your circumstances. Every time you finish something small, you teach your brain a lesson. I complete what I begin. That sentence becomes stronger with repetition. Eventually, your subconscious expects completion instead of quitting. Imagine how powerful that becomes. You no longer need to convince yourself to finish. Finishing becomes normal. That is real transformation. Not changing your schedule. Changing your default behavior. You have a choice. You can wait until you feel capable of finishing big things. Or you can start becoming the kind of person who always finishes small things. The second path always leads to the first. Never underestimate the power of making your bed. Cleaning your workspace. Replying to the difficult email. Reading one chapter. Saving $20. Walking for 15 minutes. Preparing tomorrow's schedule tonight. These actions seem ordinary. That is exactly why they matter. Discipline is built inside ordinary moments, not extraordinary ones. People often search for dramatic habits. The disciplined search for repeatable habits, because repeatable habits survive difficult seasons. There will be days when your energy disappears. There will be days when work becomes overwhelming. There will be days when family responsibilities consume your attention. On those days, don't ask yourself, "What is the maximum I can accomplish?" Ask, "What is the minimum I refuse to skip?" Maybe it's 10 push-ups. Maybe it's 1 page. Maybe it's 5 minutes of focused work. Maybe it's 1 paragraph. Maybe it's reviewing tomorrow's priorities. Protect the habit. Reduce the size if necessary. Never eliminate the pattern. One more step. That is how momentum survives difficult seasons. Momentum is precious. Once it exists, guard it carefully. The goal is not perfection. The goal is continuity. Many people mistakenly believe missing one day destroys momentum. It doesn't. Quitting destroys momentum. Returning restores it. Completion compounds. Never forget that. 1 completed day becomes 2. 2 becomes 7. 7 become 30. 30 become a lifestyle. The lifestyle becomes your identity. The identity shapes your future. It all begins with something incredibly small. 1 finish. There is another benefit to finishing small. It removes fear. Large unfinished goals often intimidate us because they remain abstract. Small completed actions make progress tangible. Instead of wondering if you're becoming disciplined, you know you are, because you have evidence. Evidence changes belief. Belief changes identity. Identity changes destiny. Trust is earned with yourself first. Every small completion strengthens that trust. Every small finish becomes another vote for the person you are becoming. Eventually, something remarkable happens. You stop celebrating motivation. You begin celebrating consistency. You stop chasing intensity. You begin protecting momentum. You stop dreaming about becoming disciplined. You realize you already are. Because disciplined people are not defined by giant heroic moments. They are defined by ordinary moments repeated faithfully. Day after day, month after month, year after year. Small finishes create big lives. Completion compounds. One more step. Those 3 truths are simple enough for anyone to understand. They are also powerful enough to transform an entire life. You have learned how small victories become lifelong discipline. Now there is only one final step remaining: to stop seeing discipline as something you practice and begin seeing it as who you are. Chapter 10. Become the person who always finishes. Everything you've heard in this audiobook has been leading to one moment. Not another strategy. Not another habit. Not another productivity system. An identity. Because in the end, your life is not determined by what you know. It is determined by who you believe you are. That is the lesson beneath every chapter. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You return to the level of your identity. Identity creates behavior. That's the key. For years, you may have described yourself with limiting labels. I'm not disciplined. I always procrastinate. I never stick with anything. I lose motivation too quickly. I've always been this way. Those sentences sound harmless. They aren't. Every time you repeat them, your brain receives instructions. Your subconscious begins searching for evidence to prove those beliefs true. Then your actions quietly follow, not because you're incapable, because identity always wins. If you believe you're someone who quits, quitting becomes natural. If you believe you're someone who finishes, finishing becomes expected. That is why lasting change never begins with behavior. It begins with identity. Most people try to change what they do. Very few change who they are. That is why most change never lasts. Think about someone who's trying to stop smoking. One person says, "I'm trying to quit." Another person says, "I don't smoke." The words are similar. The identities are completely different. One is struggling against an old identity. The other has adopted a new one. Identity creates behavior. Now apply that lesson to every area of your life. Don't say, "I'm trying to become disciplined." Say, "I am someone who finishes." Don't say, "I'm trying to exercise." Say, "I am someone who keeps promises." Don't say, "I'm trying to build a business." Say, "I am someone who completes difficult work." The words you repeat become the standards you live by. That is why identity matters more than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Identity stays. Finish first. Those two words can simplify your entire life. Before celebrating, finish. Before starting something new, finish. Before searching for another strategy, finish. Before announcing your next goal, finish. Because the disciplined always complete. Notice something about the people you admire. Reliable people don't constantly tell others they are reliable. Focused people don't repeatedly announce they are focused. Disciplined people rarely speak about discipline. They simply live it. Their identity speaks through their actions. That is real confidence. Quiet, consistent, unshaken. There comes a point where discipline no longer feels difficult. Not because the work becomes easier, because your identity has become stronger than your excuses. Imagine a river flowing downhill. The water doesn't argue about which direction to move. Its path has already been established. Your habits eventually work the same way. Once the identity is strong enough, the decision becomes automatic. The disciplined always complete. That doesn't mean disciplined people never become tired. They do. It doesn't mean they never become discouraged. They do. It doesn't mean they never fail. They fail often. The difference is simple. Failure no longer changes their identity. It only changes their strategy. A missed workout does not make them believe they are lazy. They simply work out tomorrow. A difficult week does not convince them they lack discipline. They simply return to the process. Because their identity remains stable. Behavior temporarily changes. Identity remains. That is emotional strength. Throughout this audiobook, you've learned powerful lessons. You learned that excitement fades. You learned that unfinished work damages self-trust. You learned that readiness comes from action. You learned that systems defeat motivation. You learned that boredom is part of mastery. You learned that restarting weakens momentum. You learned to protect your attention. You learned that integrity begins alone. You learned that small completions become lifelong habits. Every lesson points toward one truth. Become someone who finishes, not occasionally, not when life feels easy. Always. Finish first. Think about the next 10 years of your life. Imagine living exactly as you have until now. How many unfinished dreams would still be waiting? How many promises would remain broken? How many opportunities would quietly disappear? Now imagine something different. Imagine becoming the person who finishes every meaningful commitment. Not perfectly, consistently. Books get completed. Businesses grow. Bodies become stronger. Savings increase. Relationships deepen. Skills improve. Confidence expands. Not because life became easier, because you became different. Identity creates behavior. One identity creates one future. Another identity creates another. You have a choice. Every morning, life quietly asks one question. Who are you today? Not, what do you feel? Not, what do you hope? Not, what do you intend? Who are you? Your answer will never be found in your words. It will always be found in your actions. That is why today's smallest decision matters. Finishing today's task is not simply about crossing something off a list. It is another vote for your future identity. Every completed action casts another vote. Eventually, the votes become overwhelming. You no longer wonder who you are. You know. You're someone who finishes. The disciplined always complete. There is another beautiful consequence of this identity. Peace. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly negotiate with yourself. Should I? Shouldn't I? Maybe tomorrow. Maybe later. Maybe next week. That conversation drains enormous energy. Disciplined people experience less internal conflict. Not because life asks less of them, because the decision has already been made. When work appears, they work. When training begins, they train. When commitments require sacrifice, they sacrifice. Not because they enjoy every moment, because they no longer negotiate with their values. Discipline simplifies life. That simplicity creates freedom. Eventually, people begin asking you a familiar question. How do you stay so disciplined? Smile quietly, because you'll know the answer. You stopped chasing discipline. You became disciplined. That is the transformation. Not learning another technique. Not finding another secret. Not waiting for another perfect moment. You became a different person, and different people produce different lives. Finish first. Identity creates behavior. The disciplined always complete. Carry those 3 truths with you long after this audiobook ends. Repeat them when motivation disappears. Repeat them when distractions appear. Repeat them when the work becomes ordinary. Repeat them when no one is watching. Especially then, because that is where your real life is built. Not in dramatic moments, but in quiet decisions repeated every day. One finished promise. One finished task. One finished chapter. One finished life. You began this audiobook searching for discipline. You finish it with something much more powerful, a new identity. And once your identity changes, everything else eventually follows. You've heard the truth. Your future was never limited by your intelligence. It was never limited by your talent. It was limited by everything you refused to finish. Every unfinished goal became another reason to doubt yourself. Every completed goal became proof that you were capable of more. Now you know the difference. Starting creates excitement. Finishing creates transformation. Starting gets attention. Finishing earns respect. Starting feels good today. Finishing changes your entire life tomorrow. So from this moment forward, stop asking whether you feel motivated. Ask one question instead. What have I promised myself that still isn't finished? Then finish it. Not next week. Not next month. Today. Because every time you finish what you start, you become someone stronger than you were yesterday. And eventually, finishing won't be something you do. It will become who you are. If this audiobook challenged you, don't just listen to it again. Live it. Finish one thing today, then another tomorrow, and never allow unfinished dreams to become your identity again.